So anybody who tells you that you have a gene that makes you more susceptible to something is telling you that it's not a genetic illness by definition. A genetic illness, and they exist, there's about 2%. By the way, that's across all species, you know. Um, Genetic illnesses do exist, but a genetic illness is defined by very strict criteria. That is, if you have the gene, you have the illness. There's nobody that with a genetic illness, right, that doesn't have the gene that determines that genetic illness, right? There's no other variable. If you have like Down syndrome, if you have an extra 21st chromosome, you have Down syndrome, period. So this idea of susceptibility, the only thing you're genetically susceptible to is health. And the way I describe that best, I think, is with the hangover gene. Like the obesity gene is so absurd because who was obese in 1750? Because it's the human genome has not changed at all, right? Yeah. It's like saying, well, Hispanic and Black people have more susceptibility to diabetes and obesity. Well, really, how many people were obese in Africa? How many people were obese in Mexico or Spain? In fact, it's absurd, right? And so again, it's just, but the best way to explain that is this, because I will explain very downstream illness in a second, how there's some individuality, but think of this. So there's a hangover gene, right? Which they've identified. I always say I must have gotten two, but anyway, if there's a hangover gene, first of all, that hangover gene would have to be, think about it. Why would there be a hangover gene if human genes evolved before we were consuming alcohol? But put that aside for a second. Let's say I have the hangover gene. Okay. Does that mean I have hangovers all the time? Nope. I would have to expose my ecosystem to alcohol in order to get a hangover. Is that true?
Yeah.
So is it the gene or is it the alcohol?
It's the alcohol.
Correct. That's susceptibility argument refuted in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this. First of all, even when they talk about alleles and things, if a particular illness that they are attributing to an allele, like this methylation stuff that happens, well, those alleles have been around for centuries, for actually millennia. And the illnesses that people are associating with those things are exponentially increasing, and the genetic stockpile of the people that they say are to blame for this, those people never had the illnesses 100 years ago that they're expressing now, but they had the alleles. So is it the allele? Nope. It's something else going on, right? So now let's go to downstream. So once you understand why people get sick, and if you understand it's not bad genes or genetic defects or inability to self-regulate, it's stressors. It's unhealthy lifestyle, it's stressors. Once stressors have been around a long time, right, it becomes very metabolically expensive to be in the stress response all the time, and you start to get fatigue. Your pancreas gets tired, it can't produce as much insulin, you get diabetes. All of these other things start to occur. The inflammation's been around a long time, you get arthritis, you get atherosclerotic changes, your high blood sugar in your diet, and you've been sedentary, you start to get obesity. Like these things all come from chronic exposure to things that are toxic and deficient. Now, far downstream from all those toxicities and deficiencies that have been around long enough to actually create fatigue and chronic illness, way downstream, you may have some individuality of what specific illness you develop, right? So some people might have, overeat and eat unhealthy food and do all these things, and they end up with cancer, right? The other person might end up with diabetes or heart disease. But that's not because but the things that made them individuals way down the line there are not to blame for why they have heart disease or cancer, any more than the person with the hangover should blame the hangover gene. What's to blame is all the chronic stress they've been under and the poor eating, moving, and thinking and not living right for their species type that went on for decades before they developed that end stage illness. Correct?
Yeah.
So those end stage illnesses are not genetically individual illnesses. They all had the common denominator of decades of toxicity and deficiency before you can get a chronic illness. You can't get those chronic illnesses without that toxicity and deficiency. Therefore, those same people with those same genes, even if 5 years into their bad lifestyle that was leading to cancer or diabetes or whatever else, even if we changed their lifestyle at that point, them having the same genes, no changes, but if we change their lifestyle, what happens to their chance of those illnesses?
Goes way down.
Of course. So it's not the gene. It's not the genes you're born with. You're not defective, ladies and gentlemen. Please understand that. You're not born defective. What's defective is your ability to cope with the predatory temptation that our industrial world has allowed to be legal. It's legal to tempt kids with candy at the store and tell them it's food. They sell it with the food stuff. It's illegal to have slot machines and gambling and pornography, and these are all legal things that we've decided, and drugs and all the other stuff. So the defects are in our behavior, and the reasons our behaviors are defective is because we have defective knowledge, or we have defective self-control to implement that knowledge into our lives. But knowledge can be overcome with education, and defective self-control can be overcome with training and exercises. So we all have all the potential we require genetically and even psychologically. We have all the potential we need to be psychologically fit and to make and identify good choices. But we need training, because some of the things that we require, remember, we're the shopper. And becoming a good shopper requires education and self-control.